Hey there, welcome to House Talk. On today's show, we're going to be going over windows. Specifically, we're going to be thinking about failed seals, melted vinyl window frames, the myth of updating windows for saving money, and energy coatings. We got Rob Divelbast with us today. He is the principal and owner of Olympic Glass on beautiful Bainbridge Island.
So, Rob, I kind of wanted to talk about probably the most common thing that comes up on home inspections and real estate transactions is what I think is commonly called failed seals or the cloudiness between the panes of glass. So, I don't know, you get a lot of pushback often if you're a home inspector that a failed seal is just sort of a cosmetic thing. But I know that, certainly that can drive a lot of people crazy. Sometimes you can't even look out of the window. So I guess my first question for you is, I've always wondered, is a failed seal the proper vocabulary for talking about the cloudiness between the panes of glass?
That's Dylan, thanks. That's exactly what we call those, the failed seal, or we might also refer to them as a blown IGU. And IGU means insulating glass unit. That's a double paned unit that is installed in a vinyl, wood, or metal window.
Yep. But if we call it a failed seal, we don't look like idiots. That's sort of a common vernacular.
That is the vernacular.
Yeah. So I in the past I've heard that we should be calling them failed desiccant strips, but I'm not certain that's totally accurate. Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay, so an insulating glass unit is made up of two pieces of glass glued to a metal channel, and they do contain a desiccant, and the desiccant is run either on the inside of the channel, which would be called a desiccant strip, or the more modern technology uses what's called an inverted spacer, so that the channel is facing towards the outside of the insulating glass unit, which is in the factory packed with desiccant beads, silica beads, like you get in the little packet that comes in a box of new shoes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So we don't see failed strips anymore because there aren't any strips anymore. What we see is failed seals with saturated desiccant beads.
Yeah. So the term saturated desiccant is still kind of accurate. It's just not necessarily a strip. There's different ways that they put the desiccant in now.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting. I've always wondered, sometimes you see failed seals. We got a picture up here if you're listening. The first picture we had up was just your typical failed seal where you get kind of that cloudiness and condensation between two panes of glass. In this picture, I mean, is this something that can change a lot seasonally? Like if I'm a home inspector and I'm doing the inspection in August and it's super dry, could my client move in and, they hit November and suddenly it's a lot worse?
The way that these things go, they continue to collect more water or vapor over time. They do off gas a little bit during the day when they get heated up. But over time, the amount of moisture inside of them on average increases.
Okay, so if you see a mild one, it's pretty certain that it's getting worse.
They don't ever get better.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. So and I know when I'm doing my inspections, I'm often looking really hard for, just even the smallest little signs of a lost seal, because I think to myself, well, it's going to get worse. And I might put in the report, some degree of urgency there. And that's why I brought this picture up. If you're listening, we've got a picture up of the strip on the bottom of the window that's completely rusted out and just kind of blasted away from corrosion. So this window has obviously had a failed seal for a lot of years and has just completely rusted out that strip at the bottom, the metal strip. So it seems like when I see them like this, you could make a bit more of a case that it's a kind of urgent, almost structural like repair. I mean, could you start getting water damage in the wall and stuff from this, or?
In general, a vinyl window frame is designed so that it will always weep outside, and that looks like it's an operable sash. So in that particular instance, what you would end up with is, water might flow through from the exterior and then over the sill of that sash, and then it would have to make its way, into the track below and fill the track below at which point it might make its way into the interior.
Yeah, but in theory, would still be captured, in the track underneath and then out the weep holes, right? So,
Yeah. And, and that goes to proper maintenance will save you a lot of headache later. Just by cleaning out the weep holes on your windows, you can avoid some of that stuff.
yeah, that's great advice. Now, if you're not familiar with the weep hole windows, particularly the vinyl windows will have this little tiny weep hole at the base of the frame, kind of right above your window sill on the outside, and it would be normal to have little bits of water kind of dribble out there. And I have found that as the window gets old, you tend to get just sort of organic debris and muck in there. So sometimes they just need to be kind of cleaned out. It's good house maintenance there. But if I see one this bad, it does seem like there's probably a bit more level of urgency to it than say just your run of the mill lost seal.
I think you're correct. I wouldn't want to let that sit.
Yeah, it just intuitively seems like it's kind of bad. Yeah. So we brought up another picture that this is a weird one. You're probably not going to know what to say about this. I know I didn't. This was crazy. I did this inspection and I'm looking at the window and there really doesn't seem to be a lost seal. I don't see any chip in the window and I look in between the panes of glass and there's all these little dead insects in the middle. And I asked my friend Charlie Buell, who knows something about everything, and he thought maybe that the larva, got in the desiccant, when in the factory. But I don't know. Do you have any other data on this crazy picture?
Well, it could be that the larva got into the desiccant in the factory and somehow managed to eke out a living for some period of time.
Yeah.
It could have been that IgU completely separated and somebody took it out and glued it back together.
Yeah.
And, those would be my two guesses.
Interesting. Yeah, pretty funny. Anyway, if there's any other inspectors listening, you can chime in on the comments if you guys run into this. I know Charlie showed me, he's got a great picture of some termites. I think it was termites that were in there. So, yeah, apparently this isn't the only time it's happened. He's run into it before. So yeah, failed seals. And then, sometimes I'll see this was in a house that had those really rusted out strips at the bottom and they were using foam and stuff. And I did start getting worried that maybe the frame was starting to compromise that it was no longer a waterproof frame. Would that start to happen over time? I mean, exposed vinyl window with really bad lost seals.
I suspect that what we're seeing there might be just a misdiagnosis of a problem. Like, you're probably correct. There was probably water weeping in over the top of that sash, and somebody thought that it was a broken frame and tried to fix it with Gorilla Glue.
Yeah, and it was probably the weep holes all blocked up, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great call. I bet you're right. Yeah, that's smart. Cool. So I wanted to discuss item number 2 that I had on the docket here was, and I've done a bunch of houses over the years, and I don't feel like I've seen it recently, but I'm picturing a couple 90s era homes I've done, and I think both of them were on the waterfront, where it really seemed to me like the exposed windows south and west face were literally like the vinyl frames were melting. I mean, the windows look completely distorted. And I have a picture up here of vinyl siding that my friend Charlie Buell sent, and it's got these sort of melted vinyl on it. So what's the deal? I mean, can the vinyl frames melt? I mean, is that a thing?
So that used to be a thing. Absolutely. And it's not a surprise that you were seeing it on waterfront, because waterfront properties, those ocean exposures, get direct sunlight and they get light reflected off the surface of the water. So it's kind of a double whammy.
Sure. Yeah.
Sometime in the last decade or so, the window manufacturers figured out that they could add titanium to the vinyl composites, and that has eliminated that problem.
Interesting.
So
okay.
we don't see the melting and the deflection anymore. And that titanium is similar to the stuff that they put in some of these really cool new paints that make them extremely durable. So
interesting.
It's reflecting a lot of light primarily.
Yeah, like sunscreen for your window.
Color fast. Exactly.
Yeah, cool. So, basically, if you were building a new house today, you had a lot of exposure, you wouldn't shy away from vinyl frames just because it's taken a lot of sun. You feel like they've kind of come around the corner on that one.
Indeed.
All right. Yeah, good to know. I mean, you certainly can't beat vinyl for the price. I don't take a lot of weather in my house, but I did vinyl windows and I'm very happy with them, and I thought their price was pretty extraordinarily good.
You know what, Dylan? We're contractors. and we spend all of our time working on other people's houses. And the last thing that I want to do at the end of the day is go home and work on my own.
Yep.
So I have vinyl windows.
Yep.
Because they're durable and they're color fast.
Yep. Yeah. No, I've been super impressed. I mean, you think about like, oh, wood interior and clad exterior windows. I mean, Jesus, you could go to vacation in Hawaii for like 3 months for what you're going to spend on those. I mean, it's incredible. So I've grown to appreciate vinyl windows.
Yeah. I mean, the other products are beautiful. You do have to be willing to maintain them.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're looking for some kind of like a fire and forget, vinyl's the way to go.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Good to know. So I wanted to talk a little bit. This was item number 3 I wanted to chat about, the myth of window paybacks. I mean, you sort of hear the sales pitch. I think the old joke that I heard was, the guy had the window replacement company put all new windows in his house, and the secretary calls and says, "Sir, you haven't paid your bill." And the guy says, "But you said they were going to pay for themselves."
Mm-hmm. There may actually be a little more truth in that than.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it. So, I mean, it's obvious this is a complicated conversation because every house is so different. Some houses have single pane windows, some have double pane. You could live in a mild climate like the Pacific Northwest, or you could live in Montana, or you could live in Florida, and all these factors are going to play into it. But and obviously there's great reasons to update your windows. Your windows could look like these ones, where you've got old wood windows where they're literally just sort of falling apart. But what about the payback of window updating, going from either single pane to newer windows, or even if you have maybe like an 80s era, old metal frame going to newer windows?
Okay, so for me, and I'm in the window business, the primary reason to change windows out in a house is aesthetics. Mm-hmm. If you've got a double pane window that you've already got installed in your house and it's original construction, and you've got a nice watertight envelope, good siding, then I would counsel you to put your money into insulation in the attic in particular. Mm-hmm. For me, that's the best way to control heat loss. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big advocate of spending a few $1,000s on improving your insulation rather than many thousands of dollars on doing window change out, thinking that you're going to get a significantly reduced energy bill.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I remember years ago I did a lot of energy audits, and we'd build energy models and stuff, and it always seemed like there were some things that had the best payback were often the silly little things like, going to LED light bulbs, or doing a programmable thermostat, or, weather stripping your doors and windows. Air sealing was always a big one. But yeah, windows, it would just intuitively seems like they're so expensive to get a whole lot of R value.
Yeah, that's pretty much the substance of the conversation that we have around here with our customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, R value, if you're not familiar with it, those listening, I mean, we measure heat loss and R value, right? So they're the resistance to heat loss. So if you have R49 would be modern code insulation in your attic, and then the cavity between the studs in your walls. Today we do R21, at least in Washington State. And what is the R value of a single pane of glass?
I think the R value of a single pane is about 0.4.
Yeah, that's what I always said a half was kind of my rough guess there. And then what are we looking like if you get German argon filled windows with all the latest technology? I mean, what would your R value? What's the best window you could possibly get?
About a 3.1.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing, really. No matter how you slice it, windows are heat loss. They're also heat gain, depending on what side of the house they're on and where you live and stuff, right?
The trade-off is light.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, whereas you could blow in, if you have R10 in your attic and you go to R49, that could cost you a couple $1,000s, and you've really made a huge difference on your R value in the attic. So, in general, if you're listening and you're interested in improving the energy efficiency of your home, probably the best bet is to get some type of an energy audit or get a home inspector out that knows a lot about it. And, you try to come up with a game plan and a logical sequence And you know, I think we talked about this before we got on the air, Rob. But you know, if you're the skin of your building, the exterior siding and stuff is in really good condition, you know, window replacement can be pretty traumatic, can it?
Yes, that's something that I really harp on when I'm having these conversations. When a home is built, new construction is that's basically the best shape that your home's going to be in if it's built to code and built carefully.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan of leaving the building envelope intact. Now the building envelope is the sheeting and the vapor barrier and the siding.
Yep.
And the way that we build these things, they're designed to move water away from the interior.
Yep.
And once we cut into the siding and then the vapor barrier, regardless of how conscientious we are about products that we use and how we use them, it is just never quite as good as original construction.
Yep. No, it's really tricky. It's you know, in my book I talk about windows as being an entrenched system in a building, and it's hard to touch the windows without also touching the siding and your trim inside and the wall finishes, and you know, it can be kind of an invasive project. So, you know, my advice to people often is try to nurse your windows along until you need to do the siding as well. And then
I'm glad that you're saying that.
Yeah, right. I mean, it kind of makes sense. When you do it as a project, you can kind of get all the flashings right and the underlayment and all those things dialed in, whereas it's harder to do as a retrofit. So, yeah. So I guess the real takeaway is if you want to save energy, it's smart to have a game plan, and you can work your way down it. And certainly, windows are one tool in that toolbox, but they're not the only tool. And there's probably some things that are cheaper and a better payback than window replacement.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's go over. I want to talk. You sent me this really cool picture that I love. So, and I don't really know much about energy coatings. It's not something I deal with too much as an inspector, and maybe I should know more. I would imagine if you're an architect or a builder, you know, if your client has a big city view, you know, the type of energy coating you have could change the light that comes in from the night skyline of the city. Or if you are taking if you're on the water and there's a big solar glare coming off, I would imagine the energy coatings you have could really affect the heat gain and things. So I would imagine there's quite a bit to think about with energy coatings and selecting the correct coatings for the correct locations.
Yeah, you know, this whole energy coating thing is about compromise, because the more heat gain you eliminate, the less visible light you let in. So, you know, around here, light transmissibility becomes a real issue in the winter. A window that has a really low coefficient of light transmissibility is going to make your house darker in the winter.
Interesting.
So this is always a compromise. I think what we're looking at here is the gray panels are probably one of the original hard coat energy coatings, and then the two bluer ones are replacements that are probably the silver sputter coat.
Okay, yeah. And which one so if you're listening here, we're looking at a gable end of a house and this kind of cool decorative window with different shaped panes of glass, and some of them have this sort of metallic blue tinge, and some of them are kind of a gray tinge, and some of them almost kind of purple. Whoops. And these are kind of reflecting the different coatings here. We'll pull this back up. Are there one of these that is going to really make the house kind of dark during the day and stuff?
Those two coatings actually don't vary tremendously in their light transmissibility.
Okay.
The reason that they're different is because they changed the material makeup of the coating itself in about the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So the two panes that are bluer are made of an energy coating that's primarily silver, and the ones that are more gray or brown are a tin coating.
Okay. And will these coatings deteriorate over time, or are they good for the life of the window? Or?
Well, they're elements, so they're not going to deteriorate, but what they will do is separate from the glass.
Okay.
So, you know, we would call that a failed coating as opposed to a failed seal.
Yep.
And with a failed seal, it looks cloudy, and you can see like mineral deposits in the glass sometimes. With a failed coating, you'll actually see the spray pattern that they use to apply the molten or vaporized metal to the inside of the glass.
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen those a lot, and I've probably even called them out as lost seals. But that's technically not correct. It's a failed coating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's good data there. So if you were building a house, is this the kind of thing you'd come into a company like Olympic Glass and try to get a consult to figure out which energy coatings? I mean, would you use different ones on different side of the building and stuff?
That would mostly when we're doing things like that, it's at the direction of an architect.
Yep. Yeah.
Most of what gets installed around here is just complying with Northwest Energy Code, and that is consistently the mid-grade. It's called a double silver soft coat.
Okay. And I imagine when you start, I mean, you mentioned that like some of these windows you can get up to like R3. I imagine your cost per window for some of these super efficient windows starts getting kind of crazy.
Yeah, you can end up in spots where you're adding zeros.
Yeah.
Orders of magnitude difference in unit costs.
Yeah, for very little benefit, unless you live in a much harsher climate than here. I mean, it's hard in the Pacific Northwest. It's always sort of 50 degrees out, Yeah. Energy paybacks aren't the best. Plus, we have like cheap electricity and stuff around here, so we're pretty lucky. Cool, Rob. Well, that's interesting. Anything else to add here on window coatings at all? Energy coatings for us? Am I missing something?
I would just say that if you got any questions about it, reach out to someone who knows. And we have some, fantastic little pieces of technology around here that we can come out and help you identify this stuff with.
Nice.
I'm always happy to have the conversation, and help you
That's
manage
awesome.
your investment the best way possible.
Well, at the bottom here somewhere, we'll get your contact info. Again, we're talking to Rob Divelbess, and he's the principal of Olympic Glass here on beautiful Bainbridge Island. And if you live on Bainbridge and you need windows, you can always go see Rob. And anywhere you are in the country, there's going to be glass companies in your neighborhood that specialize in helping you with this stuff. So, well, thanks for coming on today, Rob. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Dylan, it was nice talking to you. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thanks to our sponsors here today. A big thank you to Rob Divelbess of Olympic Glass on Bainbridge Island. I want to thank Dylan Chalk House Talk for hosting this podcast. I want to thank Dylan Chalk and the Confident House Hunter, a fantastic resource for helping home buyers and realtors get out in front of the home inspection. And a big thank you to Scribeware Software, the best software report writing system in the home inspection industry. Thanks for watching.